wondering how I got into this mix.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Derek Bros. Today is Friday, February 5th, 2016. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Conscious Resistance Live, a semi-weekly podcast that I do here for theconsciousresistance.com, the Conscious Resistance Network. Go ahead and follow us on Facebook at the Conscious Resistance Network. Follow us on Twitter at the Conscious RN. You can find all of our videos, interviews from myself and the team at the Conscious Resistance YouTube channel. And you can follow me on Twitter at dbrosLiveFree and find me on Facebook. Or get in touch with me at Derek at theconsciousresistance.com if you have ideas, questions, comments, criticisms, hate mail, or want to become a part of the network. Get in touch with me. So before we get into the news, which is what we do here, I like to cover my weekly articles I write for Mint Press News, for Truth in Media, for the Anti-Media, for Activist Post, and for a number of other websites. And every week I try to bring you the most important of what I've written about. And you can find it all at derekbros.contently.com for your further investigation and research. But I bring you what I think is the most important, and also we highlight some of the work at theconsciousresistance.com, and trying to give you the tools to expand your mind, to expand your knowledge as you pursue solutions and freedom in this crazy, mixed up, scary, beautiful, insane, awesome world. So let's get into it. Most recently, Danilo, aka Peaceful Anarchism, he did another interview with Eric July, voluntarist, Christian anarchist, and conscious rapper. Check that one out. I haven't watched it yet, but apparently he makes some really awesome music. Danilo also posted, you can see here, debate part 1 and 2. He debated Todd Lewis. I guess he was representing Christian distributism, and Danilo is representing a voluntarist anarchist position. So check that out if you're interested in those topics. And I did a report on Ross Ulbricht preparing to appeal the Silk Road verdict. As of yesterday, Thursday, February 4th, Ross Ulbricht was, sentenced 1 year ago, and I was there in the courthouse, and I did an interview with Abby Martin on RT because I was there covering the trial. And it's really just a disturbing case. We're finding more and more information that, the government agents involved likely were blackmailing Ross in some way, and it's unfortunate. And also the government is trying to send a signal to him because of his ideology, his beliefs in agorism, and trying to create counter-economics answers outside of the state that freaks them out, so they had to put him away for life. So check that one out to hear more about that case. I also did a video a couple weeks ago, Who is Josiah Warren? And I highly, highly, highly recommend this one because this is what is on my mind right now. Building communities, working on the ideas of freedom cells. He also was America's first individualist anarchist. He has a lot of awesome ideas. Check that one out. Then over here we've got Insights from a Defiant Woman is a poem from Kayla Moon, one of our other contributors. Check her out. She does lots of poetry and video interviews and such. And we got 2 more reports from me. European scientists split over glyphosate cancer claims and what is Standard Operating Procedure 303, which I advise you to check out. And then you can see even a couple more weeks back, The Pledge of Allegiance, A Look into the Deceit, is a video and an essay from Christina, who's another one of our newest contributors. Check that one out. Very awesome and well-documented information on why you should not pledge allegiance, whether or not you consider yourself to be a patriot to this country or not. Look into the history of that, and she does a great job of exposing that. So check that out. Now let's get into the news. Let's see what is going on this week in my mind. And these articles are coming from the past week and a little bit further back because it's been a couple weeks since I've done a podcast, and there's some important news I want you to know. So we've got about 7 or 8 stories here, and I don't want to spend too much time on them, but they are important. So please do pay attention, check the articles and the information below, and do your own research. The next 2 are related to Stingray surveillance. Stingray surveillance, I've talked about for 3 years now, is cell site simulator technology, which looks sort of like that. That's a Stingray 2 if you're watching the video. And it essentially tricks your cell phone into thinking that it's connecting to a cell phone tower like it does on a regular basis. And then it's capable of sucking up all of the data from your phone, pictures, texts, all the numbers you've called back and forth, all that information like that. So it's a dangerous tool, and the law enforcement would have you believe that they are only using in emergency situations whenever there's terrorists or dangerous criminals out there. But more and more through the work of intrepid researchers and journalists and FOIA activists, we're finding out that the police are lying. New documents from the American Civil Liberties Union now reveal that Anaheim, California police, right outside of Disneyland, have been using Stingray surveillance inside planes, which is something we've known about for a while, that these planes existed, but now we're seeing that a tiny little town like Anaheim is using this. Anaheim police possess 3 different forms of cell phone surveillance tools according to newly released documents. These devices are known as cell site simulators. In 2011, Anaheim police purchased the Stingray, and in 2013, the chief of police upgraded the device. And then it also says that the Anaheim police possess another powerful site simulator known as a dirt box. The dirt box is a military-grade surveillance tool made by Digital Receiver Technology, or DRT, which is where it gets its name, DRT box, dirt box. In 2009, Anaheim police used a federal grant to purchase a dirt box. This device is capable of collecting information from thousands of phones at a single time in a single flyover. It's also capable of cracking encryption on 200 cell phones at once on the new state-of-the-art 4G LTE networks that your smartphones are using. It's capable of cracking those. They also let local police departments outside of their jurisdiction, outside of their own police department. Every city in Orange County apparently has benefited from these devices because they're sharing them with other departments. And this is just another example of a police department, even a smaller one like this, using these tools to indiscriminately monitor people. And the next story here is just an extension of that. A Stingray case has finally made it to a federal appeals court, which is just one step below the Supreme Court. And of course, I'm not one to blow any smoke up the government's ass or to support the Supreme Court or, really give them much legitimacy. But I will say that it's a good thing if these tools, the technology exists, and the police force out there, who are the defenders and enforcement arm of the state, are out there right now using them on us. Then we can, in the meantime, as we build outside the state and get away from their power, we need to find tools to counter them, or at the least get local smaller government reform and get these some sort of law passed, I guess. I mean, I really hate to say that, because honestly, if you pass a law that says, okay, Milwaukee police or Houston police, you have to use a warrant. Now, what about the feds? What about the NSA, the FBI, the DEA, the IRS, all these different agencies, the Secret Service, the Marshals, that we know that have these same devices? What's to stop them from doing it? So I don't really know what the answer is, but I know it's difficult to even imagine there being a solution when all these various government agencies have these tools, and they're only going to stop using them if they get caught. And then we'll pass a law saying, okay, promise us you'll come get a piece of paper before you use this, and have to hope that they're being honest. And I don't know if I trust that, but either way, we can say this is a good win, that this case has made it this high up there. And it's really crazy when you look at the case. It's United States versus Patrick, which involves Milwaukee resident Damian Patrick. This dude was arrested for a probation violation. He was wanted for a probation violation. He had an arrest warrant out, and he got pulled over in a car. He was in the passenger seat with a friend, and the police came in to search his vehicle. They found a gun on the floor, and then they checked him and found out he had an arrest warrant. So they arrested him. And through the course of the trial, it became clear that the police had been tracking his phone, and so was the FBI. They were apparently watching him. And like they often do, they asked the judge for a pen register or trap and trace order, which is only supposed to get the numbers being dialed, the phone and the number that it dialed. But they get permission to use Stingrays, which are a lot more invasive than that. And judges often have no idea what they're approving because they just don't understand the technology yet. So that's one of the problems. But also just the fact that the police are trying to be secretive about why they were monitoring him in the first place, if they were simply monitoring him based on this probation violation, which is pretty freaking scary. As the Electronic Frontier Foundation attorney Jennifer Lynch noted, it looks like the police are using Stingrays for pretty minor crimes that run the gamut. So yeah, this is, when they tell you that, oh, if you're not doing anything wrong, then don't worry about it, and the police departments don't want to talk about it, they're full of shit. This is the future. This is the panopticon, the surveillance state, where every move you make is being watched and everything you say is being listened to by someone. Especially if we're using these computer devices, you have to turn your computers off, unplug them, put your phones, take the battery out, put them in another room, and protect yourself in some way from external surveillance, and then maybe you can have a private conversation. At least in the city. If you get out of the city, you might have a little bit safer, but who's to know how many different devices are planted out in the forest? I don't know. Maybe I'm being crazy. The next two stories have to do with things Obama doesn't want you to know about. We should make that a segment. The Obama admin doesn't want anyone seeing the Guantanamo force-feeding videos. I wrote this last week. On Thursday, the Obama administration announced its intention to appeal a federal judge's order to release videotapes from the Guantanamo Bay detention camp. The videos show a former detainee being forcibly removed from his cell and force-fed. In October 2014, U.S. District Judge Gladys Kessler ruled that the Obama administration had to unseal videotapes related to the force-feeding of Abu Diab. He was being held without charge at the military prison in Guantanamo Bay. He was kidnapped by the Pakistani government in 2002 before he was handed over to the U.S. on suspicion of terrorism. And after 12 years, behind bars without a trial, he was released, but not to his home country because, once you're labeled a terrorist, you can't go home. The violence and force-feeding procedures have caused permanent damage to his health, and he's now confined to a wheelchair. Now, why would he have permanent damage, and why is he confined to a wheelchair? Well, the videos that they're trying to get released, they show him being subjected to what is known as forced cell extraction and a force-feeding process. The force-feeding sessions came as a result of him refusing to eat as part of a hunger strike that spread across Guantanamo Bay. At one point, there was 100 detainees that were participating in it before the government decided they weren't going to release any more numbers. Now we have no idea if anybody's still hunger striking or what the numbers are. And, they've been slowly trying to release people to other places to shut it down, possibly, but there still are people there. And when you refuse to eat, the way they force feed you is either through your nose, but also they do something known as rectal feeding, which apparently caused some permanent damage to his ass, and God, it's horrible to think about. After several appeals and delays, Judge Kessler gave the Obama administration until January 22, 2016 to release 11 hours of footage. However, on Thursday, lawyers with the U.S. Department of Justice said they will appeal the judge's order. And the Obama administration is going to keep trying to fight this every step of the way. They don't want us to know what they are doing to other human beings and what the U.S. taxpayer is supporting. And if you are supporting it through taxation, I would say don't feel guilty. Maybe feel guilty for a moment and take that guilt and turn it into energy and find a way to remove yourself from the system if it doesn't fit your values and your morals, and stop supporting them. Another thing the Obama administration doesn't want you to know about is Operation Fast and Furious, the notorious failed gun running scheme. On Tuesday, a federal judge ruled President Obama cannot use executive privilege to deny Congress access to records related to Operation Fast and Furious. U.S. District Court Judge Amy Berman Jackson ruled that the Department of Justice's prior release of information related to Fast and Furious invalidated President Obama's claim that releasing details of the program would cause harm. The department itself has already publicly revealed the sum and substance of the very material it is now seeking to withhold. Since any harm that would flow from the disclosures sought here would be merely incremental, the records must be produced, the judge wrote. So she's trying to get them to release this 2012 report from the Justice Department's Office of Inspector General regarding Fast and Furious. And if you guys remember, in 2012, the House of Representatives voted to hold then Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt of Congress for refusing to hand over documents and lying multiple times while under oath, that he didn't know about the program or he had just found out about it. And on June 20th, 2012, Obama exercised his executive privilege to keep the documents secret. And they have been fighting since that time to keep them secret and private from the view of the public. Now the judge is saying they can't use that executive privilege, so we'll see what the next phase is and if any more truth comes to light. This one, we have to take a moment now to celebrate the victories. It's not all doom and gloom out there. I've been taking a free class lately on one of those free websites, where you can take free school taught by a university professor, and I've been taking Journalism for Social Change, and it highlights how it's important to write stories that, not puff stories and positive stories just for the sake of being positive, but stories that highlight that there are people out there fighting the injustices and that there are solutions being put forth, and to highlight those solutions. So in that vein, we are going to highlight a solution here with a victory down in Brazil. A judge has suspended the operating license for the Belo Monte Dam in the Brazilian Amazon. In a stunning victory for indigenous rights, Brazilian federal court judge Maria Valente del Carmo suspended the operating license for the Belo Monte hydroelectric dam. The suspension will remain in place until the dam's owner and the Brazilian government complete agreements made with indigenous groups. So this is a huge victory for indigenous people of the Brazilian Amazon, because there's basically been multiple reports, and the company itself and the government itself saying that they had to make sure to work with the indigenous people if they're going to build this huge project known as the Belo Monte Dam. Unfortunately, there's so much money invested in this that it will at one point probably go forth, and the people down there, though, there have been indigenous groups who've said that they will fight these hydroelectric dams to the death. The Munduruku tribe is one of them, and there's many others out there that are trying to keep their nations, their culture, and their way of life alive, and to save the earth. And Belo Monte is definitely a dangerous project. It could displace 20,000 people because they're going to be flooding thousands of acres of Amazon rainforest. The Belo Monte Dam has faced extensive criticism, including calls from Brazil's public federal ministry to recognize that the crime of ethnocide was committed against 7 indigenous groups during the building of the Belo Monte Dam. They have also said that the company behind the dam violated 55 different obligations it previously agreed to honor in an attempt to offset the damage done to indigenous groups, farmers, and fishermen who will lose their homes. And I end this with saying, while we celebrate this victory, we should also recognize that it might be short-lived. The Belo Monte Dam is already completed, and there are literally billions of dollars invested in this project. It is unlikely Brazil's government will simply walk away from it. Unfortunately, the Belo Monte Dam is yet another example of the continued abuse of indigenous communities in the name of progress. So, think about that, celebrate it, and keep fighting. Now, just yesterday, Thursday, the trade ministers from the 12 nations involved with the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement signed the agreement in a this was already a foregone conclusion. They, pretty much agreed to this back in November, but this is the formal signing of the document. And now each of the nations involved, they have up to 2 years to get it ratified by their individual countries, and each of those processes is a little bit different. But yeah, so this is where we're at. This is the trade agreement that has been operated in secret for several years. The Obama administration was determined to get it through. He signed and approved a fast track, which now that it's been ratified, the Senate and the House only have an up or down vote on whether or not they approve of the project. They can't make any changes to it. And that is what was previously agreed to. So this document, operated in secret by trade ministers, whoever the hell these people are, just other bureaucrats, and with heavy influence from multinational corporations. And now that we've seen the official text, there's tons and tons of problems with it. I've written about this in the past, and there's plenty of good reports. So please do your research if you're unsure of why you should be against the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Don't take my word for it. But it's been signed now, and likely this will not get signed as far as the United States. It won't get ratified until after the 2016 election, maybe not even to the next president. That was a word that was reported recently by the Washington Post and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. So they're going to push it down a little bit because Obama knows it's unpopular. They know it's unpopular. They've pretty much done everything they can. Now it's already, again, a foregone conclusion. This deal is going to go through. It's already been agreed upon. The majority of people that are in office right now say they support the bill because it's supposedly going to bring jobs, even though that's been debunked. But the reality is it's going to make the corporatocracy more apparent, the international corporatocracy, where corporations and government work together to fleece the people. And while in America there were a few scattered protests around the country during the day of the signing, in Auckland, New Zealand, where it was being signed, literally thousands, some say tens of thousands of people gathered in the streets. You can see this picture right here, and marched around. And one lady even threw a dildo at one of the trade ministers, which is pretty classic and hilarious to see. And right here's a report from Ben Swan, Reality Check. What we know about the TP makes it the worst trade deal ever. And you can read the rest of this article for tons of other people who've called it out for various criticisms, especially the ISDS mechanism. Check that out, and how that's going to override the national sovereignty of the individual nations involved. And yeah, that's now been signed, and it's on the way to becoming law, I guess you could say, and we'll see. It's going to affect every single one of us and so many areas of our life: the internet, intellectual property, medicine, tons of different things. It's huge, massive, containing, I think they said 60% of the world's economy, maybe it's 40%, something massive. And also you can see, though, what's taking place is this power play where China and these other nations are starting to sign their own agreements, their own sort of trade deals. These 12 nations are partnering together, then there's going to be other factions. And I believe this is, the quote-unquote New World Order. It's these various parts of the country trying to partner up together and, behind the scenes doing proxy wars and propaganda wars and sometimes outright wars against each other, vying for control. So it's an important move. Pay attention. Last two things I want to talk to you about related to this Zika, whatever, this disease, this virus that's going around. And I don't know what to think, guys. I've done a little bit of research on this. The Anti-Media wrote an awesome article, Claire Burnish did, noting that the same area where these GM mosquitoes were released is also the same area where it seems like the Zika virus has spread. And, some people were criticizing, saying, well, they released male mosquitoes and those mosquitoes don't spread the virus or something along those lines. So I'm not sure if that's really the conclusion. I did post on Facebook immediately and ask, hey, is this population control? Because you never know. The people behind these GM mosquitoes and a lot of these experimental technologies don't necessarily have the best view of humanity, and I'm not sure of their goals or their end game. So I don't know what to trust or who to trust. And now we got this report from CNN: Zika challenge similar to AIDS for medical community. And this is a new top Brazilian researcher is comparing the Zika pandemic to the AIDS crisis of the 1980s. Now, of course, you got to know this. The media loves a big fancy headline, right? They want to put something out there to scare the shit out of everybody, to drive up ratings and headlines. And CNN is definitely a failing agency in the age of the internet and powerful individual pursuit of knowledge. So they want to gain your attention. So we have to take that into consideration. Did they get this guy to say some crazy quote so, we can all click on it and drive up their clicks for the day? Possibly so. And, it's just one guy's opinion. Who knows? This could be being overplayed, but at the same time, the World Health Organization is, freaking people out. But they did this last year with Ebola. You remember that? And Ebola is still going on. It's still killing people in certain areas of the world. But maybe these crises are not as big as they would like us to believe, and it's all about creating a frequency of fear that creates a state of disharmony in ourselves and serves those who wish that they were in power, the powers that wish they were. And, it's just generally not, it's just about pushing disinformation maybe. This guy says the challenge for the scientific and medical community is comparable to what happened when we first knew about the outbreak of the HIV infection. Every day there's something new because of a huge outbreak with very little scientific knowledge. Now, but also we must remember that, this virus has been known about for some time now. This isn't just something that we're hearing about for the first time. Now, here's another article that someone sent me. Rockefeller patent shows origins of Zika virus, and what about those genetically modified mosquitoes? Now, this is coming from Collective Evolution, which doesn't always have the most reputable stuff, but they do have some factual things here. The Zika virus, that you can go buy it if you wanted to, and you can get through the various checkpoints. But also that it's been known since at least 1947. Researchers from the Rockefeller Foundation put a rhesus monkey in a cage in the middle of the Zika forest of Uganda. The team was conducting surveillance for yellow fever. And, it goes on to give you some more ideas. So the Rockefellers are involved, genetically modified mosquitoes. This is where I said, some people in the comments say, hey, this can't spread that way. It's information. But I think it's worth you looking into. What is the truth behind this Zika virus? Is it really, going to bring AIDS? Is it just like the AIDS, pandemic? Or is it all fear porn propaganda designed to keep us in a state of fear and disharmony so we can't think straight and focus on the realistic solutions that do exist in our life? Leave your thoughts and comments below. And the last story I wanted to talk about has to do with Julian Assange, which I know there's probably people watching these videos and different viewpoints within my audience of whether or not Julian Assange is, himself some kind of psyop. And Webster Tarpley and other people have written about this. Daniel Echelon as well. I don't know where I stand on that. I don't know if I would necessarily buy that. I haven't seen any hard evidence in what I've looked at that Snowden or Assange or some kind of agents. But putting that aside, this situation is pretty fucked up. The way that he's been. You watch the video and he's saying he's been in this embassy for 5 years, away from family and his kids and such. And now, just the other day, a UN panel ruled that he'd been arbitrarily detained and that he should be awarded compensation and released. So, again, whatever you think about the United Nations, I don't really like global governments, but it's a bigger institution with some respect in certain circles saying, hey, this is bullshit. The U.S. And other nations, Sweden, Britain, and these nations should stop pursuing him for the secrets that he helped release through WikiLeaks and allow him to, go home or at least face charges if there's going to be charges. But, I don't know. These men are never going to be safe, and for those who are just catching up, WikiLeaks in 2010 released over 90,000 secret documents on the U.S.-led military campaign in Afghanistan, followed by almost 400,000 U.S. military reports detailing operations in Iraq. And these disclosures were followed by a release of millions of diplomatic cables dating back to 1973. Tons and tons of information, tons of stories have been written on based on the documents that they have leaked. And now he is, basically saying he should be let go home. In this picture, you can see Julian Assange holds a copy of the UN ruling as he makes a speech from the balcony of the Ecuadorian embassy in central London, February 5th, 2016. So, what do you guys think? Should he be allowed to go home? Is he a psyop? What will happen if he does go home? They're not just going to let him go, just like Snowden. They're basically fucked. And, if these people are psyops, then I guess they're getting to live cozy in an embassy or in Russia and just pretending to be running from the U.S. government. Maybe they're double agents, or maybe they are really what they say they are, and they sacrificed a lot to share truth and information, and now they're suffering for it. But you guys decide. That's all I got today. There's a lot of information, a lot of news in about 25 minutes or so I hope you guys can handle that. I'll be posting all these individual videos on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/consciousresistance. The full video will be up as well. And if you want to sign up for Patreon at patreon.com/DerekBros, you get access to exclusive content. I've got tons of exciting stuff coming up this month. And also my new project will finally be launching on Beacon, my crowd-funded journalism project focusing on indigenous and native issues. So stay tuned for more information on that. And thank you guys for supporting my work and supporting the work of the Conscious Resistance. Please do go check out the other contributors on the website and see what they have to say. If you'd like to become a contributor, get in touch with me or get in touch with us through the Facebook page. And yeah, thank you guys for supporting. And as always, if you can hear this, you are the resistance. Peace.
Trusting the truth of my power like a battery, showing a new way to each and every wagon see, imposing the impossible, surpassing every obstacle, sailing with my voice until we all become unstoppable. Visionary depiction, blurring back.